If 1955 is when Kanchenjunga is finally climbed. And there are a lot of things that are going right at that time. I mean, suddenly they're figuring out the mountains. They're succeeding on them. Everest was 53, climbed in 53. Like you said, Charles Evans was the deputy leader, but George Band, Norman Hardy, and some of the other climbers on this expedition were also part of the Everest expedition. And this was not supposed to even be an expedition to climb the mountain. They were there on a reconnaissance to figure out how to climb it. So in the next expedition, we'll bring the big guys and they'll come and climb it. Was like no one was taking this expedition seriously to succeed.
Hello and welcome to another episode of podcast Books and Us, where we explore new ideas and find inspiration through books, primarily non-fiction books. Dear listeners and viewers, today we take off from an earlier episode on Sikkim, which was the first episode of season 3, released just 2 months back. In that, we had talked about Sikkim. The book was Khangchendzonga, Sacred Summit, and the author is Pema Wangchuk. And I would describe the book as a magnum opus because, or like a Wikipedia or a Sikkimpedia. It has so many details on Sikkim's recent history and also tracing its origins from antiquity. So today we are going to discuss the rest of the book. And Pema, it should be. Is it difficult to discuss a book after you've written it like almost 2 decades back?
It is. It is. Like I had to kind of go back to some of the chapters and see if I even remembered. I mean, you lose track of the specifics, but the stories stay with you. So
I can imagine.
yeah, but it was
And
interesting. Even I was kind of, oh, we found this out as well. Like some stuff that I had forgotten. So yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's fun. Always.
So, welcome back to Books and Us.
Thank you.
Uh, Pema is a journalist working in Sikkim since 1994. Currently, he is a consulting editor at Summit Times, based at Gangtok. He also co edited The Birds Have Lost Their Way, a collection of essays on Sikkim's experience with hydel projects and climate change. And I just learned that he's working on something very exciting about different stories on Sikkim, and he's bringing out an illustrated book on that. We'll talk about that later in the program. Today, I want to start with bringing in some of the feedback we got on episode 1. So I was surprised to see that there is a lot of interest in the Pandit stories, or the spies which were trained by the British East India Company to spy on Tibet and the surrounding regions. So this came from a friend Sibesh who has his own blog called Punctuations and More at blogspot.com, and he wrote a special blog on the Pandits. He says it's very interesting indeed, and especially the stories about the Pandits, and looking forward to the next episode. And in his blog, he wrote about Nayan Singh, who of course was a Pandit from the Garhwal region, and also about Sarat Chandra Das and Kinthup, which he said were new to him. So he was delighted to find out about them, and then he also dug up a few details and wrote about them in his blog. Then there is some feedback from Anisha ji, our author who has written some fascinating books on history of Delhi, Anisha Shekhar Mukherjee. She writes that this is such a fascinating multi-layered conversation, and I learned so many things from listening to it, including the references to Uttarakhand. I am from there, but some things were new to me, though of course Nanda Devi looms large in the cultural and physical landscape of our mountains. Practically the only Kumaoni folk song I know, which my grandfather taught me, brings in a refrain about Almora ko Nanda Devi, meaning Almora's Nanda Devi, the mountain. So Pema, here also Nanda Devi is being evoked as a deity, I think, in this folk song, and
Yes,
how people
yes.
identify with it.
Completely. I mean, you cannot but do that, right? When there's this imposing presence of nature, big
Mm,
mountains, big rivers, big lakes, big
yeah,
rocks. And Sikkim is full of those. So yeah, yeah, yeah. And the biggest rock is Kanchenjunga. So it's hardly surprising. It's hardly surprising. And it's always so wonderful how people manage to attach so many stories to mountains around them.
yeah, and also because they have been there for generations, and some legends of the legends from the mountains keep getting carried on from
Yes,
generation to generation.
yes, yes, always, always, always. I mean, that's also how people like to kind of explain their surroundings. This is how they'll make the introductions for the next generation. It's always so cool to find these stories. Yes.
Yes. And last time we also talked about Dalton Hooker, and I found out in social media there is a lot of interest on Hooker, and one of the authors, Sumona, she has written a book on plants of Sikkim, and she's written about Hooker a lot, about
Yes,
his,
I mean,
yeah,
he was the
yeah,
first one to explore this area in such detail with a scientific bent of mind, with no other agenda. His interest was the natural world. It was not the empire, it was not conquest, but just inquisitiveness that brought him here. So
and that,
even though he had a very bad experience, right? I mean, his travels in Sikkim ended with his being arrested and kept in prison, incarcerated for a little bit time. His partner was like the person accompanying him was treated quite badly, but Hooker was generally well treated. But he doesn't let any of that come out in a book that came out a few years later. I mean, that book is still full of wonder and respect and appreciation of Sikkim and the Sikkimese people. So, I mean, you see the difference there.
and
Everyone else who was writing books on this part at that time were basically company officials looking at conquest, expansion, or
yeah,
civilizing the native.
yeah,
Hooker was just wonder.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So no, I was saying that he has left behind such a legacy that even now, after more than 1.5 centuries or 2 centuries almost,
Yeah.
people are still writing about him and his work. And I even bought a print of one of his botanical, flowers. I bought a
Mm.
print
He's
from
done a
Sikkim.
book called Rhododendrons of Sikkim, which is so pretty, illustrated book.
Okay, so Alexander Michel Kellas,
Kellas.
isn't it? Kellas. He came after Hooker and is often considered the first true mountaineer in the region. So today I want to talk about the expeditions. And so, though he didn't climb on Kanchendzonga, but he climbed all the smaller peaks, I think, around Kanchendzonga. So, who was he, and what influence did he have on the later expeditions?
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful that you start today's session with Kellas because when it comes to mountaineering, and this is something that not enough people recognize or talk about, but from my readings, and especially since the book also came out, since then, the more information that I've collected, what I've realized is that Kellas is instrumental in the conquest of Himalayan giants. He was so in love with climbing and with documenting it. He was a man of science. So he was a professor of chemistry in a college, I think in Bombay. And during his summer breaks, he would come to Sikkim and do all his climbing. And being a scientist, he's obsessed with note taking. So he would record
Uh-huh.
all his experiences and he cracked the mystery. Oh, no, no, not the mystery really, but he cracked on how the 8,000ers or even the 7,000ers could be climbed. So he figured out altitude sickness. He figured out bottled oxygen. He was the one who came up with this idea that we could probably climb mountains better if we used supplemental oxygen. And you remember this climbing is happening before the First World War. He comes to Sikkim and West Sikkim, essentially, the Zongri Gochala famous trekking routes where he's climbing. He comes there for the first time in 1907 and climbs consistently until the First World War breaks out. And his breakthroughs with the bottled oxygen experiment is something that the British later use for their aircrafts. Because remember, in the First World War, the few planes that were flying were these open air biplanes in which I mean, we've seen those sketches, right? The pilot is sitting exposed and they have oxygen masks because you won't be able to climb. It was his contribution that cracked that science of reaching high altitudes. He looked at mountaineering. I mean, I think, the guy who makes mountaineering like cricket into a gentleman's sport. So he called mountaineering the most philosophical sport of all. Like, because here you're engaging with a mountain. There's no conquest, or it's just an engagement. I mean, it's almost meditative for him. So that's what I find very fascinating with him. And he wrote a lot of stuff. And many of his notes and articles were not so much about how he climbed the mountain, but more about the problems he faced and how those could be surmounted. And he becomes the first one who says that we have to use local expertise. He had not yet cracked the fact that the Sherpas are, just because of living so high in the mountains, are better equipped to climb them. But he figured out through experience that the white man has to stop looking at Sherpas. And he spoke specifically of Sherpas. You have to stop looking at Sherpas as your porters or people who will carry your gear, but look at them as your partners in when you're climbing the mountains. So that is essentially his big contribution. And you got to also remember that Kellas arrives at a time when visits to the mountains are just moving beyond exploration to climbing. Because until then, people were coming to the mountains more to explore, as in to map, to record, to travel cross borders, find the passes. But then Kellas comes in this first generation of climbers who are looking at these big mountains as challenges on how to reach the summit. So in that sense, it's all very exciting from him. So just imagine, from 1907 to 1921, when he unfortunately dies, he's just climbing. Like every season, he's doing like 6, 7 peaks. And every time he's finding new methods of climbing, how to use ropes. The Sherpas that he climbs with are dressed in their bakus. They're not even wearing mountaineering gear. Like even they are climbing with boots and tweed coats at that time. So, uh, yeah, I mean, his whole approach to mountaineering and the ton of stuff that he leaves behind, being a man of science, is what led to the British figuring out how to climb mountains, which is why, even though he has already spent 3 months climbing in Sikkim in 1921, now I'm talking about, when an expedition to Everest is being mounted, and this is the famous Mallory expedition, right? So when they're going through Sikkim into Tibet, Kellas has already been climbing all over West Sikkim. He's already tired of 3 months of 3.5 months of climbing here, but they still want him on their expedition because he's the guy who knows all this stuff. He knows the area. Unfortunately, he just crosses the border into Tibet, and it's a place called Khampazong, which is just north of North Sikkim, and he died there of what the mountaineers call sheer exhaustion. He had just been climbing for so long, and in this very touching gesture, the 1921 expedition buries him and puts his gravestone and the cross facing Sikkim, because those are the mountains that he so loved. And yeah, and like, for anyone who knows mountains, mountaineering, Sikkim and Sikkim's mountains, one of the bucket list places to visit, at least on mine, would be to go to Khampazong which is not very far from Sikkim actually, and be able to, and hopefully that grave is still there, and to just, I don't know, it's like a pilgrimage it would be, yeah. So yeah, I mean, he's that significant. And in apt homage to him, I guess, in North Sikkim, there is a peak named Kellas Peak. There was an unnamed peak that he climbed, and the mountaineering fraternity of his time in the 1920s, the Royal Geographical Society, agreed to name it the Kellas Peak, which carries a bit of irony in it because Kellas was completely opposed to giving Himalayan mountains Western names. He was the one who fought for Everest to be called Chomolungma. He was the one who fought for Khangchendzonga to be called Khangchendzonga, and for K2 not to be called K2. So, but I guess it's a good homage, right? It's not a very big mountain. It's a small, pretty mountain in North Sikkim called Kellas Peak. Yeah.
So this Kellas did a lot of he found out a lot about the mountains and how to climb them. But the routes to climb Kanchenjunga were earmarked or found out by Freshfield, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way, in a way. Because when Freshfield does round Kanchenjunga in 1899, he's traveling with Vittoria Sella, which is a fascinating mountain photographer. So they've done what we would today call high resolution photographs of the mountain. And Freshfield himself, being an armchair mountaineer, um, like as in he did not really climb mountains. I mean, some of the passes are still very high that he crossed at his advanced stage. So from these photographs and from his kind of first-hand knowledge, he had charted out uh, theoretically what were the possible routes. Because one of the biggest challenges on a mountain, from what I understand, I'm not a climber myself, and this is all like vicarious through what we have read, is to get the initial approach. Like, how from the valley do you climb high enough on the mountain to then actually start your mountaineering and the bigger challenges? It is the initial bit that is sometimes more challenging. I mean, look at Everest, climbing from Nepal, the Khumbu Glacier, which is right at the base camp, is the first big hurdle that needs to be resolved. Once you've cracked that, then the mountaineering skills come in, right? Before that, it is the exploratory bits. So yes, Freshfield came up with the three possible routes, and these happen to this day be the three routes that are taken whenever the mountain is approached for climbing. And what are they? Southwest face, which is the most popular one, which is in Nepal. So two of the routes are in Nepal and one is in Sikkim. So southwest and northwest faces are in Nepal. And the southwest is through the Yalung Glacier, and the northwest is through what is called the Kanchenjunga Glacier. And you've got the northeastern face, which is in Sikkim, North Sikkim, the Zemu Glacier approach. So all the mountains have to be approached
Asha.
through their glacier, right?
Uh,
And so these are the three main routes: southwest, northwest, and northeast. So northwest, southwest are in Nepal, northeast is in Sikkim. The first expedition on Kanchenjunga was in 1905 through the southwest, so through the southwestern face. And the successful one in 1955 was also through that route. So yeah, so Freshfield was instrumental in that. And you got to also bear in mind that Freshfield was also the president, apart from before him, Young Husband, who's the other adventurer of the Himalayas, Francis Young Husband. He was the president of the Royal Geographical Society, and then it was Freshfield as well. So they promoted these routes. And yeah, I mean, obviously, after 100 years, we know that these are the most practical approaches as well. So yeah.
the southwest approach is also one can also go through Sikkim, right? Through Singalila
You,
and
yeah. I mean, Singalila being in Darjeeling, but you could take, yeah, the approach, because what happens is, so what you got to keep in mind is, uh, although the base camp for the southwestern face is in Nepal,
Acha.
it is very remote in Nepal. Eastern Nepal is very remote.
Mm,
So they would go through Sikkim, through Darjeeling actually,
mm,
is because the logistical support was easier to manage
mm,
in Darjeeling,
mm,
and then go into Nepal, because on the Nepal side it's very remote and empty. So
mm,
they would start from Darjeeling primarily because that's where all the material would arrive in the train and the through
mm,
Calcutta, and all the Sherpas were camped there. So you would hire your climbing team, your porters. So the logistical support was better organized in Darjeeling. So
mm,
even the Everest expeditions, which went through Tibet, started in Darjeeling, right? They would
mm,
start in
mm,
Darjeeling.
mm,
That's where they would put it together and move through Sikkim into Tibet. So
mm,
you cross over from the Singalila range, yes, you could cross over from Kangla, which is in Sikkim,
mm,
but not because that's the only approach, but more because that's where all the organizational backup would be present.
mm, mm,
So 1905, yes, 1905, 1955, until 1955, when they were climbing in Nepal, they started in Darjeeling.
mm, mm. The
And of course, you
19,
would come into Sikkim and then cross over to Nepal.
yeah. The 1905 expedition
Yeah.
was very interesting. I came across many interesting personalities, in fact, in all the expeditions, and that sort of tells a lot about, the adventurous spirit of people and how they wanted to climb and conquer the Himalayas, as they would say, because this was an uncharted area.
Yeah.
And in 1905, the expedition was led by Alistair Crowley.
Yes.
So, what an interesting personality.
Yeah. Completely mad.
Yeah.
Uh,
So,
um,
what happened to the expedition and who was he actually?
in the turn of the century, I mean, the early 1900s, 1905, this
Mm,
uh, is a very interesting time, I think, in England,
mm,
where they are they are coming across a lot of Eastern philosophy. They are questioning their own Christian roots. People are being experimental. And Crowley is what happens when that keenness goes into La La Land. I mean, it goes into the crazy people
yeah.
land, right? So he gets into all this black magic and all that stuff later.
Okay.
But then I guess, so, I mean, I look at Crowley, I mean, you look at his photographs from later times.
Okay.
He's peddling
Yeah.
the uh, Oja boards and like conversing with spirits, black magic, antichrist, all of those things he does later in life. But he was so, I mean, like I said, it's that very thin line between passionate and crazy.
Mm,
So to climb mountains, you have to be crazy,
mm,
but not like madman crazy. This man was like clearly an obnoxious personality as well. Unfortunate that he becomes the first guy to take on the mountain. So it's a very interesting expedition, and so little is known about it because you see, later expeditions are all mounted by organizations. So you have
mm,
Royal Geographical Society backing organizations, or you have the bigger mountaineering groups, or established names with government backing. All the later expeditions are like that. This 1905 business is a privately funded a hotel. I mean, so all the other guys,
mm,
including the people who die, are, I mean, not established names in mountaineering. Of course, that sector is not established at that time. One
yes.
of them is a hotel manager.
Mm,
Like he's managing a hotel in Darjeeling,
mm,
and he puts together. So it's kind of like the commercialization of the Everest that we see today,
mm,
right? So he's actually says, okay,
yeah.
I'm going to put together an expedition to Kanchenjunga. Who all want to come along? And a
Mm,
lot of people come along for the adventure.
mm,
Crowley clearly is a man who has a very domineering personality.
mm,
So even though it is not his expedition,
mm,
the group makes him the expedition leader.
mm,
And I think that's not a very good idea because although at that time he is not conversing with spirits yet,
mm,
and he's not started his this weird occult business that he gets into later in life,
mm,
he is already very racist. There is enough evidence of people who survived that expedition who write about how And you got to keep in mind, 1905, being racist was probably not even considered bad.
Hmm.
Like that was the normal for a white man to be. So can you imagine what level of racist attitude he must have shown that the other white people in his group also got disturbed by it? So um, he's racist. He's ill-treating his white colleagues on the mountaineering expedition. And of course, he's treating the porters that are accompanying the expedition much worse. And that is, I think, a very bad aura to carry on the mountain where it has to be
Hmm.
about camaraderie. You have to depend on each other. But this is a
Yes,
guy
for
who
your
pulls out a
life.
gun.
Yeah.
He'll pull out a gun when when the porters are scared. There's an avalanche, they are scared. There is a rumble, they are scared. He'll pull out, instead of kind of speaking to them, he takes out a gun because he writes in his diaries that his idea was that they have to be more scared of me than the mountain.
Uh-huh.
Then they will do whatever I ask them to do. And so there is already very bad vibes happening on the mountain on his expedition. And very like it's not a very detailed, we don't have, like, normally mountaineering expeditions have very granular detail, right? Royal Geographical Society has tons of unpublished notes on every expedition. This is not one of them. But what we do know is that the Italians that are part of this expedition from Darjeeling or whatever, four of them are so disgusted by how Crowley is behaving that there is a mutiny. They decide to abandon the expedition. And in support of the porters that they are with. So these four guys, along with the porters, as they are leaving the mountain, they are struck by an avalanche. And four people die in that avalanche. Crowley is so monstrous that he sees the avalanche happen in front of him. He steps out of his tent, and this is his own admission.
Acha.
He steps out of the tent, sees the avalanche, goes back into the tent, and goes to sleep. Doesn't look for whether he
Uh-huh.
can rescue people or even the dead bodies can be recovered. Next morning, very early in the day, he's abandoned the expedition. He
Acha.
runs away.
He runs away.
Like he just abandons the project, comes back to Darjeeling, and goes off wherever he's come from. The people in the expedition, the porters who have left behind, they go looking for the dead bodies and they bury one of the. So it's a very famous spot on the southwestern face. It's called Pache's grave. So slightly higher up on the mountain, not very high up, I think just beyond Yalung Glacier. The 1955 expedition uh, found remains of
Yeah.
the camp and the grave. So the first photograph of Pache's grave was who died there in 1905 was found in 1955, which yeah, is kind of a very somber reminder of what can happen on the mountains and why picking a good team is so important. That people learned very early. Luckily for Sikkim and for the mountain and mountaineering, people are very careful most times on the team they put together because you don't want a Crowley up there again. So yes, that was a bad one. And he was clearly also a liar. I mean, not only was he mad and crazy and racist and disgusting, because he comes back and he claims that he reached the height of about 25,000 feet.
Yeah, but actually it was
But
20,000.
yeah, because that's where the camp was. The camp where he ran away from is at 20,000 feet. So clearly a liar as well. Hmm.
He was
I mean,
known as the
thank
beast.
God. I mean, like, thank God he's not the guy who becomes the first one to climb it because then the mountain is scarred forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then the next attempt came only about 20 years later in 1925, and then there was a flurry of expeditions, but from different routes. And then there was expedition by Tombazi, A.Z. Tombazi,
Yeah.
and very interesting because of the sighting of what he saw.
Yes. I mean, Tombazi is not a mountaineering, as in not, he's not climbing, he's photographing. So
Photographing.
he's on a photographic expedition for the Royal Geographical Society. He's kind of empaneled with the RGS. And he did two tours into the Gochala Zongri area. Phenomenal photographs. Every photographer on the mountains, to this day, to this day, everyone who goes to the mountains seriously with a camera is inspired by Vittoria Sella.
Mm,
And every photographer will admit that they have not been able to match his mastery of the craft, let's say. So Tombazi is there as well, and he's photographing extensively. I mean, he's there in 25, I think, 1925, he's in that area. Uh, and yes, and the Yeti sighting is important because he writes a detailed record of, because in 1925 the camera equipment was still very bulky. It required to be set up, and it was not like point and shoot that we have today, right? So he wakes up very early, like people are shouting. Migu is what a Yeti is called in Tibetan. His porters are shouting that the abominable snowman is here. He comes out of his tent. He's got a very detailed record of this, and it's 200 yards away.
mm,
I was just thinking, like, most times we read 200 yards. I don't know, at least with me, I just read a number until I break it down and say, I said, that's just 10 cricket pitches, right? It's from where a batsman is standing to where the boundary rope is. That's not very far. So he's that close. He comes out, he watches this Yeti at 200 yards away, takes detail. He can't put up the camera, so he doesn't take a photograph. He writes details. It is not huge. It is not the Yeti that we imagine today to be. It's even, I think, smaller than most man. It's like less than 6 feet tall. It's
Acha.
not big. It's hairy. I mean, this is the Chinese whisper. This is like the media playing up. So I'll get to that. So he writes this.
Mm.
This becomes the only accepted, scientifically accepted sighting of the Yeti.
Till
Uh,
date.
till date, because Royal Geographical Society, I mean, he's a Royal Geographical
Yeah, yeah.
photographer. So this becomes the only accepted Yeti sighting. And it's so interesting because he sends this wire. It's a telegram report he sends back. And then someone holds a press conference, I guess, in Calcutta, and they talk about his sighting. And when he finishes his tour or whatever, and he gets back and he reads what has been published in the newspapers, not in the official reports, what is published in the newspapers, he says, "Oh my God, they've made it about 3 times taller than what he saw." And that becomes the popular myth, right? That
Yeah.
becomes the established idea of a Yeti, which is nothing close to what he actually saw and recorded. So, yeah. So, I mean, that's what is special about Tombazi's tour, apart from some very interesting photographs that are not published. It is there in his album at Royal Geographical Society because it is not just what he shot at Gochala. At the end, like from where you can see the mountains and the snow, he also documented the route in great detail, like moving from Darjeeling, the villages, the routes, the rivers, which I think even non-mountaineering, non-adventure, non-trekking people, and more like people who want to study urbanization, people who want to study climate change, the impact of climate change on the mountains should probably revisit his photographs and see how much things have changed.
Yeah.
I've seen, like, I just kind of one afternoon spent some time with his photographs and I said, oh my God. I mean, of course, things would have changed in 100 years, but it is still phenomenal what he has documented of that entire journey. So yeah,
Yeah. So
that's
he,
special. Yeah,
yeah. So he saw what he describes as Yeti, or the people say is Yeti, moving away from the camp
yeah,
at a slope, and it was a dark hirsute figure, right?
yeah.
That's what they say. So
It's
yeah.
yeah, it's not wearing clothes. It's
So
not
we'll
wearing
come to
clothes.
the
It doesn't have very
Yeti.
big feet. Yeah,
We'll come to the Yeti later on in the program,
yeah.
because
And he
you
also
have.
becomes okay. And I mean, okay, he didn't photograph the Yeti, but he was also one of the first ones to photograph an a Himalayan avalanche on the like slopes of Kanchendzonga. So that's a dramatic. people like had not seen the force of an avalanche like a photograph. You'd heard about it, but this was something else that he
Yeah,
photographed.
and this is what the most of the mountaineers were facing,
Yes.
and hundreds of feet of snow, glaciers, and vertical ice walls,
Yes.
and
Madness.
whatnot. Yeah, and
Mad-
winds at really high speeds.
Yes, and what comes before the avalanche? I mean, he describes it like he's photographing the avalanche at a safe distance, like it's nowhere close to his camp. But the blast that comes before the blast of wind that kind of precedes an avalanche and the mist and the pieces of ice and snow that hit him, he describes that in pretty interesting detail. Yeah, I mean, we can only live it vicariously, right? I mean, I'm not going there to face an avalanche. Yeah.
So then there was this expedition by a American EF farmer who disappeared.
Yes, but you can't call that an expedition, right?
Okay,
It was always doomed. I mean, you can't climb a mountain
not prepared.
solo and not
Yeah,
prepared.
yeah.
You can't just like pray your way to the top, which is essentially what he was risking. This had become kind of controversial at a time because it's a white man, even if he's doing a completely harebrained expedition where he wants to climb on his own, when his porters come back, like there is an inquiry or on whether they murdered him or whether they abandoned him, right? Because you don't know, right?
You
He's
don't know.
climbing alone
And they'll be
until it was later.
suspicious. Yeah,
Yeah, but they established later that,
he
I
disappeared.
mean, he killed him. I mean, he caused his own uh,
Okay,
demise.
acha.
Like, so
Because
that was
he set off without adequate clothing. He set off on his
yes.
own.
Yeah, the idea being that I'll just willpower.
Yeah,
You've had those, right? Even on Everest, there was a guy who just flew a plane, uh, I think in the same time around the 20s. He just said that if I just crash a plane onto the slopes of the mountain, like as high as I can go, and from there I'll walk it to the top. I mean, what can you say?
what can you say?
I mean, you
Yeah.
can't even call them proper expeditions, yeah, apart from them being interesting bits.
So 1929, there was another expedition by Germans, Bavarians. Paul B- Paul
Paul
Bure
Bor,
Paul
Bor, yeah.
Bohr was the leader, and again there was interesting personality, Peter Offenreiter,
Yeah, I mean,
who was part of a novel which was written 7 years in Tibet later on.
yes, yes. One of the guys who escaped with Brad Pitt, Heinrich Harrer.
Henrik Harrier.
Heinrich Harrer.
Henrik
Yeah,
Harrier was his companion, and they had
yes,
both
yes,
spent 7 years in Tibet later
yes,
on. Of
yes.
course, that was
And they
much.
were both climbing, even when they were arrested, that they were climbing Nanda Devi, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
or was it Nanga Parbat, like, but they
yeah,
were climbing in Uttarakhand
yeah.
when they were taken into custody. Yeah, I mean, like the 1929 and 31 expedition, it's an Austrian-German expedition, and it is considered to be one of the most resolute, bravest, and technically the most challenging and well-mounted expeditions. It's like legendary for that. Like everywhere in the Himalayan mountaineering lore, the 1929 and 31 expeditions are considered to be the benchmark of what level of courage, teamwork. So everything good about mountaineering is seen on these expeditions. And I'm
Both,
sure they were very good. I'm sure
both,
they from Sikkim on the
both
north.
were led by the same person.
Yeah, Paul
Yeah,
Bor. Yeah, so it's from northeast face, from Zemu. They're climbing from the Sikkim side
yeah.
on the
The
northeast
more
side.
dangerous one.
Yeah, because it was even more remote, uh, less explored. It had not seen any expeditions on it, so they were actually finding a route. And the books are brilliant. The books that came out of those expeditions are brilliant in their detailing. You got to keep in mind that it is also Nazi time in Germany. Germany. So when when we, and I'm not the one to comment on it, I'm just kind of wondering that this whole idea of bravery, strength, teamwork, whether that is not just a promotion of the Nazi ideas of how good the Aryans are that got played into the writing and the public image of these expeditions.
Yeah, okay.
We got to keep that in mind as well,
Okay.
right? We are looking at this because that's the ideas that they were promoting at that
Yeah,
time.
that they
That
took it
was
on as a challenge.
yes, it was also that.
Yeah.
It was also that, and we will realize that that is something that, like, not Nazi, not fascist ideology, but stubbornness and courage are required, especially on that phase. So these two become very, they don't get very high on the mountain, neither of these two expeditions, but whatever height they achieve is considered a feat, a major feat of mountaineering excellence, what they managed on it. They have to eventually abandon it. Interestingly, so this is 1929, 1931. I think it was 1999, another expedition had come to Sikkim, which was led by Paul Bohr's grandson.
Oh,
His grandson had put together an expedition that came through Sikkim to climb it in 1999, which was such a surprise for Sikkim because Sikkim had banned climbing on Kanchenjunga. This was the permission given by Delhi, by the central government. And when they arrived here to tackle the northeast face, because they wanted to recreate the same face that their grandfather failed on, and there was protests in Sikkim. Sikkim was very upset, but somehow the team reached the base camp, but they could not even make it to, I think, Camp 2 because the weather was so foul. The weather was so foul, and the there was heavy snowfall, avalanche, everything. So yeah, they could not make it anywhere close enough on the mountain. In fact, I think I have got a photograph. I mean, I'm that old in Sikkim that we covered that expedition in our paper, and one of my friends did this brilliant sketch. Because of course, 1999 is when photography was not very popular with regional newspapers. So we managed to get this really interesting photograph sketch that a friend of mine made. Let me see if I can find it and share with you. It's a sketch. There's a hand from the mountain stopping it.
acha.
And I'll share this with you. Maybe you can add it later, whatever.
Yes, yes, yes.
But yeah, so that happened. That happened.
So this both these expeditions by Paul Bear reached the second one reached 26,200 feet.
Yeah,
So almost 200 2,000 feet
short.
200 feet short.
Yeah,
2,000 feet
1,000 feet
short.
short. So they didn't make it very high actually.
Yeah, yeah.
But even to get there,
Hmm.
because the northeast side is a tough one from
Yeah,
whatever the mountaineers say.
yeah.
Yes. And in between, there is also the international expedition of Darren Food, I think.
Yeah, 1930. I have this entire list
Oh, okay.
written like
Right.
notes
Right.
for an exam
Yeah.
to just written the main points down. And one thing I found very what should I say, uh, like a good coincidence that most of these expeditions were around this time in May.
Yes. You
And
know, it
and in
has to be like,
1955 when they climbed,
it's
it was
again
I
May.
think on 25th May.
Yeah. So the period after the winter and before the monsoons, this
Yes.
window is considered the best time to be climbing.
Hmm.
So during the winter months, you put your expedition together
Hmm.
and push out around April, and you get this window. So yeah, the snow is packed in. I mean, these are all the technicalities, right? The snow is like strongerly, more stable, and your escape, return to civilization has to be before the monsoon arrives as well.
No,
So
I
there is
found it pretty exciting that we are recording this at the same
also
time.
at the same time, yes, 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 and like And the 1905 expedition, for example, they're climbing in August, which is a bad time
That
to
time,
be
yeah.
outdoors in these parts. I mean, you're like being battered by the monsoon still.
So
So,
this Darren Forts also took the northwest frontier, northwest route.
yeah, so this is one of the few expeditions that takes the northwest route.
The only expedition which took that.
Oh, the only famous one, yes.
Yeah.
The only famous one. So Darren Fruit, they were planning to climb from Sikkim, the northeast side they had permits for. Because you got to understand, in 1930, Nepal is still a very temperamental government. You get permission sometimes, sometimes they don't give you permission, and like there is all this confusion happening. So they are already in Darjeeling, and all planned to approach the mountain from Sikkim. When the permission comes from Nepal that you can climb from the northwestern face as well. So this is a last minute adjustment that they make, which is probably what leads to them being wrong footed, because this expedition also does not do very well on the mountain itself. And and but because it is an international expedition of these people from many different countries and many different backgrounds, you've got this brilliant journalist, author called Frank Smith, who's part of it, and he writes this brilliant book called The Kanchenjunga Adventure. And he also writes book. I mean, we have the Uttarakhand connection. I think he also writes the Valley of Flowers. What is it in
Sure,
Uttarakhand?
okay.
So he writes a book on that as well later. But one of and so the name itself, Darren Fruth, is a professor. So he's not going to be climbing himself, right? He's the expedition leader. He's going to organize everything. But because he's a professor, he's also trying out experiments. And this is one bit that I really like about his expedition is he probably becomes the first person to experiment with energy drinks. And I'll tell you, so it's not Red Bull. We don't have Red Bull at that time, right? But Darren Foote comes up with this idea, what he calls, uh, I think he called athlete's brew. So he knows that the Western world is a country of beer drinkers. So he commissions this special beer, which he increases the quantity of malt and reduces the alcohol. So it's like kind of like the non-alcoholic beers that we get nowadays. And malt, we all know, we grew up having Bonvita, right? For strong bones. So he became the first one to, and so he took 1,000 bottles
On this
of,
expedition.
on this expedition of Athlete's
Okay.
Brew, which was like hopped up with malt with reduced alcohol. So I like to think of it as the first time that someone actually thought, let's try some energy drinks on the mountain. And like, yeah, if Red Bull existed at that time, they would have sponsored it. Even though the expedition fails, it doesn't do very well. We get one of the first obituaries of a Sherpa who died on that expedition, written by Frank Smith. So before he writes the book, he writes in the obituary for this really popular Sherpa whose name was obviously Chiten, but he ends up everyone. I mean, we see that very commonly here. So everyone calls him Chetan because it's a
And then
North.
he became Satan.
And he becomes Satan because it's a play of the same term, right? He's full of life. He's always fooling around. So he becomes this. So everyone calls him Satan affectionately. But he becomes the first Sherpa, let's call it the native part of an expedition to get a proper obituary that was published in the Alpine Journal or the Geographical that was published by the Royal Geographical Society. So that was nice. They came back with something like 6,000 photographs and 14,000 feet of film and uh, and a brilliant book, right? The Kanchenjunga Adventure is such a fun read. You can make out that it's written by a writer and not by a mountaineer. Although all the mountaineers were very good writers themselves. I mean, Charles Evans' book of the 1955 expedition is very well written. But Kanchenjunga Adventure, by far, for an expedition that did not succeed or do too well, is still such an interesting read. So yeah, some very good things came out of it. It's such a shame that they were climbing from the Nepal side. Otherwise, imagine these 6,000 photographs and this 14,000 feet of film would have been about Sikkim.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah.
Okay, so should we come to the 1955 expedition and what happened in that expedition? It was led by Chris Evans,
Charles Evans. Yeah.
Charles
Uh,
Evans, who was deputy leader of the Everest
yeah.
expedition,
Yeah.
which climbed.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so 1955 is the first time that an expedition, 1955 is when Kanchenjunga is finally climbed. And there are a lot of things that are going right at that time. I mean, suddenly they're figuring out the mountains, they're succeeding on them. Everest was 53, climbed in 53. Like you said, Charles Evans was the deputy leader, but George Band, Norman Hardy, and some of the other climbers on this expedition were also part of the Everest expedition, right? So they were these young. So it's very interesting that the 1955 expedition, Charles Evans is the only veteran of Himalayas. The rest of the team is made up of very young guys. I mean,
Yeah.
George Band, Norman Hardy, Joe Brown, the guys who have ended up climbing uh, the mountain are very young, but they had all been part of the Everest expedition. So have that experience. They didn't climb Everest successfully because that was Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. They climbed it, right? But they were part of that whole team. And this was not supposed to even be an expedition to climb the mountain. They were there on a reconnaissance to figure out how to climb it. So in the next expedition, we'll bring the big guys and they'll come and climb it. Was like no one was taking this expedition seriously to succeed. But they have the success of 53 behind them. That has the morale up. All these are young guys who want to make a name for themselves. They know that Kanchenjunga is the only big one left, right? Everest done, K2 done, like Kanchenjunga is the third one, uh, which has resisted climbers for the longest time because Everest expedition started only in the 20s. Kanchenjunga, they had been trying since 1905 and years they had been failing. So there are all these things happening. They are climbing from Nepal, but when they're in Darjeeling, Charles Evans realizes that Sikkim looks at Kanchenjunga as with reverence. So he travels to Sikkim and accompanied by George Band. So I had the privilege of meeting George Band, and
Yeah. Yeah.
after the book came out, unfortunately, uh, oh, no, not after the book, before the book actually. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
you've
I had
written about the
yes, yes,
commemoration
yes,
ceremony
yes.
where.
When they did the felicitation of thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they come to Sikkim, meet the king. It's Tashit Namgyal at that time. The crown prince is Palden Thondup. They meet the king, and Charles Evans, uh, over tea, tells him that we are climbing from Nepal, but I know your people worship the mountain. So he makes a promise that we will stop from wherever the mountain's summit is easily accessible. So the promise being that we will not step on your god, on the head of your god, let's say, let's call it that. And that's a promise he made. And the expedition is surprisingly smooth. The 1955 expedition, they do rock climbing at 8,000 meters. I mean, Joe Brown,
He's the
this is the
expert
book.
in, yeah, he's
Yeah,
the expert
he's
in,
like kind of experimenting with rock climbing. It's a very new discipline at that time, and he's an Australian, and so he's into. I mean, they are like basically very outdoors people, right? So he's into climbing and all that. So despite all the absolutely crazy stuff they do, the risks they take, they manage to climb without any fatalities and succeed. And all photograph, I mean, so all the photographs of the summit are from below the summit. Famous photograph of George Band. It's like the final, yeah, the 6 feet below. is where they stop. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
also they had to spend the last night. They were on a slope which was 45 degrees incline, and
yeah,
they had to tie themselves with a rope to sleep. And in the
you know,
morning, they just set off. It's really
yeah,
exciting, the last part. Yeah, so that's the summit
yeah, that's the
at the
summit
back.
behind him. So and that's George Band standing below it,
He's the
right?
one who's 24 years old, or is it Norman Hardy?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they are all in their 20s. Like they're all very young guys in that. Charles Evans is the guy at the base camp coordinating everything. So they all
So they
stop. I mean,
stop 6 feet below, right?
six
Or
feet
nine
below.
feet?
Generally, yeah, that's what they say. They stop about 6 feet below. Then we can make out from there. That's where they stopped. And there is also a photograph they take of just the summit, empty summit.
Wow.
Standing where George Band is standing, he takes a photograph of
Yeah,
just the summit.
it gives you
And
goosebumps.
it's
Looking
absolutely
at it.
crazy. And you get a sense. So you watch cricket. We are like all Indians. We're obsessed with cricket, and we hate Australia for how good they are as professional in their sport. And you get a sense of it in how the next group. So in the next group is Norman Hardy. So George Band and Joe Brown camp on the final tent. They're so high up that they have only one tent. It's a two-man tent, three if you stretch it, and they're like nailed to the slope, right? And the deal is that these guys will put the tent and return, and Norman Hardy and his friend will come up. But Joe Brown and George Band decide to just make a push for the summit. So by the time they come back, they can't go to the lower camp. They are in the tent. When Norman Hardy arrives with his colleague, he finds these two guys there. They've completed the summit, but
Acha.
they're there. And it's like, and Norman Hardy writes it so brilliantly in his book. And he says, I mean, it's great that they climbed, but that was not what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to leave the tent for us because we come with fresh legs and they can, because George Band and Joe Brown were like setting up the tent, so they're tired. So it's not a very safe, and everything is planned in these things, right? So he, in his book, writes that I was so upset. He's a Kiwi. So he's from New Zealand, Norman Hardy. And you get a sense, okay, that's where like the requirements of a team are so much more than you scoring a century, let's say, right? So he said, like, and then at night they had to all cramp into this tent. And the next day, of course, like Norman Hardy and his friend also make the summit. So a mountain that had not been climbed for 50 years uh, managed to put four people
Four
on the
people,
summit,
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what makes it like and we would like to believe, like not I so much, but like I hope Sikkim believes that uh, the mountain finally allowed people to climb when this commitment was made to leave the
Yeah.
summit untrodden.
It was 25th May, and today is
Yeah.
21st May when we are recording.
Oh, so cool. So this is when they're about to set up the final camp.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah,
Exciting.
yeah. That's so cool. That's so cool.
So, what sort of challenges you have written? I know, I mean, I read with so much detail. So, what were the kind of challenges they faced?
So, I mean, the first big challenge on this is what is called the Great Shelf. So, like you have the Khumbu Glacier, that is the challenge on Everest. On this phase, you have this Yalung Glacier bank of ice and snow that is about nearly 2,000 feet wide and must be about it's across the mountain's face, southwestern face. So that has to be negotiated, and that can be it's a moving glacier. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a glacial speed, but it's still a glacier. So that is the first major challenge that they face. And because Kanchenjunga is like lower than most other 8,000ers, is also because where the snow gets more unstable, right? It can get very hot. At the base camp, they are in their t-shirts. Like
Ah,
on the final climb, when they're doing rock
ah,
climbing, they're bare, their hands are bare. Like you can't hold on to the ledges with gloves. The final climb, when they do this circle to get to the summit, the final walk to the summit, so they're taking off their gloves and they're like holding on to the ledges. So, and of course, no one has like the final bit. The final 1,000 feet, I
Hmm.
think, is uncharted.
Hmm.
Is uncharted. No one has actually been that close. So
Yeah,
there
yeah,
is
yeah.
that as well. And they do not have the resources to be a full-fledged expedition. Like I said, that they were supposed to be a reconnaissance.
Hmm.
Like see till where you can go, and then we'll come with a bigger expedition
Hmm.
and then make the final push. So all that, and but they were such gentlemen, I think. I mean, I've spoken to Norman Hardy and George Band, and yeah, I would like to believe that they were really good people.
Hmm.
So the challenges are always that. I mean, like
Yes,
it's
yes.
not, you can't get back in time and things like that.
Hmm.
But when you're on a mountain this big, everything, every step is a challenge.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So
And then the next expedition is in 1977, the Indian expedition.
yeah, I mean,
19,
the next significant one. I mean, then
yeah,
climbing over from Nepal side and all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So
1979 was it or
77,
1977? 1977.
27.
Mm.
So it's so I've met Colonel Narendra Bull as well. And I mean, okay, his name, he's known as Bull.
But he's Colonel
Uh,
Narendra Kumar, right?
yes, Colonel Narendra Bull Kumar. So Bull is his call sign. And
Acha.
so when you meet him, he is stocky, like he
Uh-huh.
like built like a bull. But he's not called bull just for that. He's also very stubborn, which is not a very rare quality in army guys, I guess.
Mm, mm,
But he is tough.
mm,
Uh, he lost his toes on the
uh-huh.
previous expedition. He loves mountaineering, so by the time he comes to Sikkim, to Kanchenjunga in 77,
Mm,
he knows he cannot climb the mountain, but he
mm,
can coordinate the expedition. He's leading the expedition.
mm,
He's already lost his toes, so there is no question of going too high.
mm,
But he is the principal of HMI, the
mm,
Himalayan Mountaineering Institute in Darjeeling, which is where he did his first training in the 1960s.
mm,
Is when he first saw Kanchenjunga. He 55 had just happened. That memory was there, the challenge was there, and the every mountaineer looks at the 29 German expedition as the unfinished business, right? That's the only challenge left. By
mm.
the 70s, people are doing it without oxygen, winter ascent, like,
Yeah.
but this had not been done yet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So he's in Darjeeling. I mean, it's very interesting, the episodes. Um, so he asks the king for permission, and his wife, Hope Cook, takes offense. He says, "Don't you know that my husband's people worship the mountain? How could you be so insensitive?"
Mm,
And Colonel Kumar says, "Oh no, like the 55 expedition, we will also stop 6 feet short.
mm,
Give us permission."
mm.
And that's when Chogyal Palden Thondup Namgyal, who was a crown prince in 55, is now the king of Sikkim.
Aha.
Because we're talking before 75. He
Mm,
says, don't talk to me about the 6 feet business.
mm,
When George Band stopped 6 feet below the summit,
mm.
his head was still 3 inches higher than my God. So
Ah,
George Band is 6'3". He's a really tall guy. So he didn't give permission.
okay.
But in 75, Sikkim became a part of India.
Mm,
It was no longer, and Colonel Kumar uh, then pitched the idea to the Indian army that, okay, now let's try. And they got the permissions. They came, and again, like the Germans, this was so they start on 1st March,
mm,
the expedition, and the summit happens, I think, in end May.
Same around the same time.
Yes, around the same time. Nobody stays on a mountain this long. Like you're not supposed to be climbing a mountain for 3 months. Like that's not how climbing is done, but that's the Indian Army. That's why
Yeah.
he's called Bull, right? Imagine they were on the mountain for so long,
Mm,
like so long, that one of the expedition guys from Ladakh, the army guys, Ladakh scouts probably, but one of the expedition members from Ladakh ended up falling in love with the Lachenpa woman
Okay.
from North Sikkim. And when the expedition ended, they got married and she went to Ladakh with him. So that's how long they were on the mountain. Hmm. Very early, they lost a soldier
Mhm.
and they had trouble with supplies. It's wonderful, like how on the Zemu Glacier, on which mountaineers were struggling, the Lachenpa women who were being used as porters, like would just so swiftly walk across the
Mm,
across the glacier delivering goods.
mm,
So yeah, so eventually they did. Um, the stubbornness is at every level.
mm,
The final push for the mountain, the summit today,
mm,
they were climbing for 10 hours.
mm.
Like, can you imagine at 8,000 meters,
Yeah.
you're climbing for 10 hours? Your oxygen is definitely not going to last that long.
Mm,
You start before dawn and it's dark by the time they come back.
mm,
And they stopped, also stopped short of the summit. And of course, we always doubt it, right? Like when you're up there, of course, you'll just go up and come back. I mean, that's not even something that I would like to question because there was a successful Japanese expedition on this side in 79, I think. And they came back with photographs of the tricolor that 77 had planted, which was below the summit.
mm.
So that's evidence
That's
that
evidence.
they respected the commitment that they
Mm,
made.
mm,
And yeah, there's so many interesting bits about this expedition, like
mm.
how supplies had to be airdropped at one time
Yeah.
because porterage was becoming difficult. How uh, news of the summit was first broadcast by Chinese who were watching from Tibet, like with their
Yeah.
binoculars, because from the base camp you couldn't see where the
Yeah. So
guys.
they got a message. They heard on
Yes,
the.
a wireless message. Your guys have made it. Your guys have made it, and they
Yeah.
are coming down in the dark. So, and then they get hit by the worst monsoon. Like,
Yes.
not
Yes.
only they have to climb down, walk down from the mountain, they have to walk back
To
from North
Gangtok.
Sikkim to Gangtok. Like, that's it's like littered with landslides and things like that. So, yeah, 77 is special for that. Like, just the sheer tenacity. Uh, they just stubbornly climb the mountain, I would say.
So Kanchenjunga has clearly inspired so many adventurists and explorers, and so many officials went there to open up uncharted territory, for their own interests, for geopolitical interests. But all this while, there was also a stream of visitors who were writers and spiritual seekers, painters, who
Yeah.
were clearly inspired by the beauty of Sikkim, the mountain, Kanchenjunga, that area. So, what was that like, and what is really behind the inspiration? For example, Rorik, he's my favorite out of the
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Rorik has done the entire span of the Himalayas from Central Asia on till Sikkim, Himachal, Uttarakhand. So and he was a seeker, right? Like it was not just a very accomplished artist of oils, but I think, saw himself also as a philosopher. There is a lot of storytelling happening in his paintings as well. And I mean, he was obviously rich as well, so he could afford doing this. We cannot ignore that bit. So, what that did when he was traveling with this big entourage is he had access to masters, to the religious masters of different areas. And so when he's in Sikkim and he learns about Khangchendzonga and the stories associated with it and the legends associated with it, he incorporates that into his paintings as well, right? He's invoking those. feelings. So if you look at Rorik's paintings, which are very dramatic, like if you're an
Mm.
artist, I guess you'll be able to sense the cold uh, environs. He uses a lot of blue, there's a lot of snow, there's a lot of mystery. And then there is also a lot of storytelling happening there, right? There are characters also in his paintings. I mean, he is not just doing nature paintings. I mean, he's incorporating people and activity in his paintings as well, at least in his kind of set of paintings in Sikkim. So there are chortens, there are people, there is, I mean, he invokes Tibetan masters, he invokes Sikkimese beliefs, there's Milarepa. I mean, so there is this whole, um, all the stories, all the philosophies that he's being privy to because of his art and access. He includes all of those in his paintings, which is, I think, what makes his canvases more special. Apart from the fact that he's got history in these areas as well. I mean, more on the Himachal side, where he kind of set up proper base, had his studio, was doing even more painting and stuff like that. Whereas in Sikkim, he's essentially passing through, collecting all these stories and colors. So, but his style kind of sets the template for a lot of future artists because the first people to kind of start painting Kanchenjunga and this area, I mean, Edward Lear, for example, whom we do not really know much as an oil painter, but when he does his panels, um, you can make out that they are doing these paintings at a time when they've not figured out how to draw hill people. Like the postures, the mountains, even the forests are like you've got the Kanchenjungas, okay, that you can't miss, right? The snow and the dimensions are all there. But the rest of his panel is like could be from Africa. The forests are much thicker than what we have. The way people dress is more
Okay.
Indian than it's. So you see that evolution happening as well. So Rorik, yes, Rorik becomes because, and it's still a postcard. I mean, what Edward Lear is essentially doing is that he's just making a painting instead of taking a photograph. Whereas Rorik is writing books with his paintings, really, right? He's telling so many stories. The colors he uses, the activity that he has, they all make it special. One of my favorites also is the Japanese artist, Yoshida.
Yoshida, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I got a print of his after
Yes.
reading
Yeah.
about him, and what fascinating art.
Yes, and like
I
I like out here when I'm talking to people about Yoshida's artwork, and it's such a shame that we can't get better reproduction of his art,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Okay.
the ones we get are still not, I don't think they evoke the kind of work that he's
Yeah.
doing. And I like to tell people in Sikkim that he's doing woodblock printing. And imagine, like, so right now there is this very popular, famous, iconic woodblock print, the Great Wave. The Japanese paint, it's a woodblock print. I mean, like most of our viewers would know that it's called the Great Wave. And that's everywhere. It's on t-shirts, it's on notebooks,
Wow.
it's all over
Okay.
British Library. And it's a brilliant woodblock. But it's become, I said, like, yeah, great. I mean, like, I've got kids in Sikkim who wear those Great Wave t-shirts as well.
Acha.
And I said, like, just imagine, like, Yoshida is doing the same paintings of Kanchenjunga. Like, he's using the same technology. And he does this morning, afternoon, evening. I mean, he does an
Three
entire
prints.
series on India.
Evening. Yeah.
Yeah. He does an entire series on India, which the Delhi ones, the Red Fort ones are also very pretty.
And Taj Mahal series.
Yes. Yes. And Taj Mahal, like, it's overdone, right?
Yeah, but
I
he
like
made that painting of Taj Mahal with during moonlight, with
yes.
moonlight.
Yes. I mean,
I
so
got that print.
his the way he's doing it, the way he's playing with that form is for someone who understands that medium, I think it is very impressive. I love his like the Kanchenjunga series, the morning, the dawn, afternoon, moonlight bits. So yeah, I mean, and there's poetry, right? People have written poems about the mountain. Uh, I like so then. Satyajit Ray made a movie called Kanchenjunga.
which we
So
also
it is,
discussed last time. Yeah.
yes, we did discuss that
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, so
yeah,
we've gone over it already.
yeah.
So I like, I mean, there is a lot of issues with, let's say, a lot of other things in the movie, but it's experimental. I think he invokes the right mood for the mountain. So yeah, and you can't miss it. I mean, like any artist or anyone with a slightly romantic bent of mind cannot see a sunrise on Kanchenjunga and not be moved by it to create his own piece of art associated
So
with
I
it.
found this some of the inspiring quotes from the writers I have jotted down.
Okay.
Sir Francis' young husband. This is from
Yeah.
your book. I'm quoting from your book.
Okay.
I'm taking the liberty.
Yeah, yeah, sure,
So he
sure.
says, Sir Francis' young husband, he says, so pure and ethereal, we can scarcely believe it is part of the solid earth on which we stand, and so high it seems part of the sky itself.
Yes, yes. Yes, I mean, when you see, I mean, I'll grant it to Darjeeling. I like the views from Sikkim, but the Darjeeling view where you can see the mountain floating above Darjeeling,
Yeah, and
it's
mostly
like
you're
almost as
seeing,
if it's in a different plane. So that's dramatic. And yeah, I mean, young husband, for all his faults, does a pretty good description of.
and usually mountains, when you're seeing in a distance, you see like this. But here in Kanchenjunga, you have to see Kanchenjunga like this.
I know, I know. I mean, that's one thing about the mountain, right? This is the only 8,000 that is
So close, yeah,
so
to
close to
people.
habitations, right? It's right there.
So Alistair Crowley says in his book, is it a mirage? Is it a phantom of hope created by courage from the chaos of nightmare? For
Wow.
there, above the highest hills, stands the mass of Khangchendzonga, faint rose, faint blue, clear white in the dawn.
Yeah, yeah.
And Cale Young Rice, a poet,
Yes. He's
uh, ri-
that point. Yeah.
yeah, he wrote a poem, O white priest of eternity, around whose lofty summit wailing clouds arise.
Mm.
Beautiful. And
Yeah.
Nicholas Roerich writes, where else is there such brilliance, such spiritual plenty, if not among these precious snows? And he writes that under Kanchenjunga are secreted the waves in which are secreted the caves in which are resting the treasures.
Yeah.
So he alludes to the mythical land of Shambhala.
Yeah, I mean, you've got an entire series on Shambhala, but
Yeah,
it's more about like how Kanchenjunga is the treasury. It's also the treasury, like of the five elements
five elements and
that will be
something.
required. I mean, like, so the idea is it's a very Vedic idea as well, which is there in Buddhism, that when the world ends, the mountain will release what you will require for life to come back again. So, knowledge, grains, gold, because you'll need wealth, and medicines. So, it's a repository of all these. It keeps all these treasures, which will, like, if the world was to end and you have to repopulate Earth. Um, so that's what the people associate with the mountain. I mean, the Lepchas and the Bhutias, I mean, Buddhism and even the previous beliefs, they look at it as something that will be there when everything ends and then will also help create life again. So, yeah, I find that quite beautiful. That,
And about Shambhala, he also writes that under these mountains there is a secret door which leads to
yeah,
Shambhala, which is the mythical or holy land of the great masters. And this legend is there in many faiths.
yeah.
And in fact, I'm planning to do a podcast on Shambhala also. I'm reading a couple of books, looking for
Yeah,
the.
and like there was, I'll send you some links. There was, when was it? In the 50s? I forget the decade it happened, but yeah, a proper group left once for the from Sikkim for the snows of the mountain and to unlock the door into. Bayou, the hidden land, like still. So your Shambhala, what road it calls Shambhala. Yeah. So that's people have actually made physical attempts to find it as well.
Yes,
It's not
yes,
just something you
yes.
visit in your
Yeah,
meditative state.
yeah. You reach it through your consciousness. That's what they
Yes.
say.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's some of the monks for the early expeditions who said that why are you looking for roots up there? You just have to meditate on the mountain, and if you're good, the gods will lift you up and take you there. So
Yeah, and
there's
that's
that.
and that's also they say about Kanchendzonga that
Yeah.
if you meditate on it,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
it will ease a lot of your burdens and
Yes.
lots of things.
Yes. Yes.
And
And
lot of
and
these
secret. Yeah.
and lots of these people got inspired by that, the Westerners,
Yes.
and
I mean, you can see a lot of stuff that Crowley invokes in his later madness
mm,
is clearly something that he saw around in these parts and built his own fiction over that. Young Husband also comes up with this whole idea of a new faith, which is so clearly inspired from his exposure to the Eastern mysticism that he saw in these parts. So, yeah, uh, whatever little you can gather, you run with it, I think.
yeah. I once I visited Sikkim. As I told you, I was in Sikkim for a little while, and we visited Kaluk,
Yeah.
and we went to a monastery which was about 45 minutes to 1 hour steep climb. And they say that some of the paintings Rorik made sitting in that monastery and watching, because you get a very nice view of
Yeah, yeah,
Kanchenjunga.
yeah. That's West Sikkim, right? So
Yeah,
Kalok,
yeah,
Khechipuri, these are all
yeah.
areas. You get some crazy dramatic views from there.
Yeah,
The thing
yeah,
with mountains is that you just take one bend and your entire perspective changes. So you
yes.
see the mountain from a different angle and a different drama happens. That's the fun thing about seeing mountains from the mountains.
And a
Like if
different
you're,
time of the day.
huh,
And a different time
completely.
of the day.
Completely. If you watch the sunrise on the Kanchenjunga, like it just
Yes,
keeps changing size as well,
yes,
not just the lighting, right?
yes.
Like it's from a whiff, like it's,
Yeah,
yeah, it's drama.
yeah.
It's like sheer drama, yes.
One of the most fascinating parts of your book is also the section on the Yeti. And
Yeah.
I mean, I have been in media for now 30, 35, 40 years, and I have never really come across an account of which is so close to, you have even quoted people who are supposed to have seen the Yeti, and you have written so much about it. So, is it a myth, a metaphor, or a possibility? What do you say? And what all have you said in your book?
Uh, no, I mean, the Yeti is a fascinating story. I mean, I'm a story, I look at myself as a storyteller, and I love stories more than, I'm not so bothered about. Like, no, no. I mean, of course, facts are important. Let me phrase it differently,
Yeah.
because it is how people would like to remember or how people like to explain their surroundings that is fascinating. Because then you can start digging into that and trying to figure out what is leading to these. So the Yeti
Yes.
stories are are fascinating sheer purely because I also grew up reading a lot of Tintin, and Tintin in Tibet has the Yeti
Yeah.
as a character invoked in a way how the people in the mountains see
See the city.
the Yeti as well, right? So this thing of a Ban Manche, the Ban Jhakri as it is called, right out here, the spirit of the forest who can rescue people, can kidnap people, not to kill them, but to give them knowledge. And so, which is what essentially happens with Tintin as well, right? So we have this whole story there happening. I just got fascinated with the stories associated with Sikkim by way of sightings, by way of records. I mean, even Waddell uh, in the 1860s, really, right? 70s, 80s, is writing about his not eyewitness account, but a close call with a Yeti
Mm.
in in North Sikkim, right? That's
Mm.
where he sees the footprints.
Mm.
That's where he sees the yaks get spooked for no reason, and then the people telling him that it's
Mm.
the Yeti was here, and hence this happened.
Mm.
In North Sikkim, I mean, like in North Sikkim, for instance, there is a pass called Migula,
Mm.
and so Migu is Yeti,
Okay.
right? Is the local name for a Yeti,
Mm.
and this is an unpublished account of a trek undertaken across the Migula by a Westerner, but working with local guides and porters. And this person writes that it got late by the time they were crossing Migula.
Mm.
On both sides of Sikkim, it's not a pass into Tibet or anything. It's a pass within Sikkim, in North Sikkim, right? In the Guru Dongmar area.
Mm.
And when they're taking this pass at night, they're crossing Migula and it's too late, so they have to camp there. And of course, he makes his camp. They put up a bonfire.
Mm.
He goes to sleep, but he
Mm.
says his porters, the people, the guide and the porters, stayed up the whole night
Ah.
singing songs and clapping.
Okay.
Now, one of the stories that is associated with the Yeti is it gets scared by noise, right?
Mm.
So you have to clap. So they're clapping to kind of scare it away. They've got a fire on and they're too scared to sleep. And that is such, and they don't do that on other passes.
Mm.
They do this on Migula.
Mm.
And the name itself invokes, it's the pass of the Yeti. So
Mm.
it is in the subconscious cultural memory that the people carry that this pass is where the Yeti could come upon you. And although the trekker who's paying the bills for that entire expedition is sleeping, the rest of the people remember this and they stay awake all night. And that's so fascinating for me because that's not a popular trek.
Mm.
Like you don't normally do treks on those sides. And one of my worries is people will forget the name in a couple of decades,
Mm.
and with it will also die the stories.
Mm.
And these are cultural stories. These are like things I believe them to be cultural stories. So then it becomes interesting. I mean, there are other bits that hopefully in a retelling of this book will come as well. Of someone else has written about a certain person who was believed to have encountered a Yeti. One of the Another tangent of the Yeti story is that they say that if you come across a Yeti, you a lot of luck comes your way, but your life is shortened.
Acha.
So it's in one of the areas of Sikkim that they have this belief. And this person did die
Mm.
shortly after that encounter and telling everyone about his encounter. But
Mm.
good fortune befell the entire family. And unfortunately, he also passed on shortly after that whole episode. So there are stories like this, which I feel that if we don't record it, if we don't share it in this context together, will be lost. And that is what we are doing as when we're writing books, doing this podcast, or writing articles. I mean, we are doing this so that a record remains, is what I hope. So I don't personally believe in Yetis as such, right? But I love the stories. I love the stories. And if I find more episodes, more memories that people have, or more versions of the story that people have, of course, I'll document them.
Mm.
Not to convince people that the Yeti is real, but to tell them that this is how people were explaining supernatural things around them. That is what is fascinating. I mean, I was actually in a village in Zongu, uh, above which was another village, where there are still people who remember. I mean, of course, they don't do it anymore, but there are people who still remember their parents telling them that during the daytime when they were plowing the fields, they could see the Yeti on the ridge above watching them.
Watching them, yeah.
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 And then at night when they're back home, the Yeti is moving. And the so all these different aspects of it, right? Tombazi invokes some of them. Also, like so the Yeti is believed like it's so in the hills. I don't know, I forget whether this is there in North India and in the plains as well. So at night, parents will stop you from whistling,
Okay.
right? They'll say if you whistle, चुड़ैल आ जाएगी or something like that,
I don't
right?
know. I'm not
Yeah.
read that.
So yeah, okay. So yeah, and then so I remember growing up with constantly being told that not to whistle in the evenings or at night.
Yeah.
And then you realize in when I heard this story in Zongo, and this is also a recorded phenomena of the quality, the characteristics of a Yeti is it whistles
Mm.
and it comes down during dusk and slightly as it's getting dark. So this village people would talk about how they would all be at home, lock the doors, and the Yeti would be walking around their village whistling. Now he's not whistling as in like having a fun time. I guess that's the way he calls or
Mm.
reads.
To
Uh,
communicate.
yeah, could be anything. But it's then again, the people are forbidden from whistling at night for that very same reason, because the Yeti might answer you. They think it's a mating call or something. I don't know. Yeah, like it's a very interesting passage. And then of course there is this the Polish prisoner of war who escapes from Siberia,
Mm.
walks across Mongolia, China, Tibet to get to Kalimpong, going through the border at Jalalabad, who has this entire account. I mean, because his is the longest account, right? He sees a family of Yeti, a Yeti family together, right? Mother, father, and kids. And he watches them for half a day, which of course becomes a story that is discovered later and shared, and the sketch is made. That is the sketch I use in the book as well. Uh, and you know what? That story has been made into a movie, Hollywood movie. Um, some big ticket actors in it, but they don't have the Yeti portion in it.
Okay.
It's just this whole adventure of
Acha, of him escaping.
yeah, of escaping from Russia through China, through Mongolia, Tibet, and then coming out in Kalimpong. But yeah, the Yeti bit is not there in that, unfortunately. It's a very boring movie.
But very interesting, and because I even read that there are even accounts from prehistory about these very tall ape-like men in this Himalayan region from many
There would
centuries ago.
be.
Yeah.
There would be. Like for example, and uh for instance, in North Sikkim last year, so we have the Himalayan black bear.
Mm.
The Himalayan black bear is quite commonly sighted. I mean, it's everywhere in the Himalayas here, but we don't have the brown bear. Whereas, and we people just believed it, and it's sometimes even called the blue bear, but it's a brown, like it's, I guess, our version of a grizzly because it's bigger. And it was sighted near Lachung a couple of years back. And you suddenly realize, oh my God, like it probably came down from Tibet, like because, but there were no sightings recorded in Sikkim. So it could be this rare creature that people see, and then you build
Oh,
stories around it, right? Like,
look. Yeah.
but it's wonderful. I mean, Bhutan has a wildlife sanctuary uh, dedicated to the Yeti, right? They've set aside an entire wildlife sanctuary saying this is where the Yeti shall live and be safe. So I think cultural beliefs, I don't need physical evidence. It's wonderful to have these. Yeah.
So I believe that you are going to do an upgraded version of the book. So what all can we expect?
No, yeah. So the book has been out of print, I think now for, I don't know, 8, 9 years.
Okay.
And even before, so for about, and I've been thinking of doing a reprint
Reprint. Okay.
for the last 10 years. So I'm not,
Aha.
so the idea was, my point was, okay, if you want to do a reprint, it's all there, we can print it. But then there were more stories I found since I wrote the book. So yeah, so a new edition, hopefully.
Yeah. So I look
And
forward
hopefully
to
soon.
that.
Hopefully
Yeah.
soon. I've got some people really on my case, constantly reminding me that they should come out. And I personally believe that once a book is published, it should always be available. Like it should be there, like
Yeah. Yeah.
be available
Exactly.
for people to read and refer. So
Yeah. And what
yeah.
about this other book that you are coming out with, the illustrated book?
Oh, so it's a graphic novel that I'm working with a French artist, Simon Lamoureux. And so he's the artist, and like I've got the story, and I'm doing the script with him. So it's called Sikkim Stories. It's going to be released in France in September, and then we'll find someone to do the English in India. So
So
it's
it's in
Sikkim
French.
Stories. It's yeah, the first like it's in France. It's coming out in
Okay.
French, and yeah. So it's of course fiction. It's a story based in Sikkim. Follows three characters, and is their experience. It talks about, I mean, everything that we are passionate about, right? It's yeah, I mean, I think we've tried to put in everything that moves us, from environment to gender to ways of life that are dying out, from people disconnected from their roots, and of course, like we had the big Glof event in Sikkim in 24. So there is that as well. So it's so we did so when Simon was here on a residency in Sikkim, and that's when we met. I told him some stories. He liked it, and we just did a 10-page, 11-page treatment, let's call it that. So it's called this. It's in the land of the Lama.
Okay.
So this is how many pages I forget. Uh, yeah, it's a 16 pager. This
But
is a part of the bigger
okay, okay.
200
I thought
page
it's about
graphic novel.
that because in Sikkim, wherever you go, there are some lot of interesting stories. So I
Yeah.
thought maybe
No,
you
it's
would pick those.
contemporary. It's contemporary, and it's not about myths so much. It's more about, yeah, the challenges of daily life nowadays.
Okay, okay.
It's what we're doing to the rivers, mountains, people. Yeah.
You can, if you can encapsulate your thoughts about Khangchendzonga and Sikkim.
Oh, yeah. So, even when I was working on this book, I mean, we are journalists, so we tend to not take everything at face value all the time. So when I first interacted with people and stories about how much the mountain meant to them, uh, I was kind of suspicious. I think I used to feel that, okay, you're playing this up for the tourism brochure. Surely no one looks at a mountain with so much
Yeah.
awe and feeling and connection. So that was my initial first response, that of course, like, but then as I was working on the book, it changed. Like I realized that it's very genuine. Everything that the communities, the cultural memory that people carry and associate with the mountain is truly deeply felt. So that was a very humbling experience for me as well, and my suspicious mind. And over the years, what has happened is that it has not changed. As I read more, as I come across even more archival material, um, I realized that it meant so much for the people. And it gave so much hope. Like it filled in so many gaps, and it kind of helped people. I don't know how to, I mean, it was great for me. The book, when it came out, it works as such a wonderful introduction uh, uh, to the kind of work that we do. So that has been that has only gotten reinforced over the years, I feel. So I tend to look at a lot of cultural claims with suspicion, but when it comes to the mountain and what it has meant
To
to
the
the
people.
community here, like that, I have stopped doubting, because and it's so weird. Like just the other day, I was walking to town, and it just it was after so many days of overcast skies, and now I notice the mountain every time it's the views are good, right? So, and I was looking at the mountain, I was thinking like it's just a thought that came to me. I said, okay, I wrote the book, I know the mountain, I know these stories, but I wonder how many of the current generation, or if even the older generation, still look at the mountain that way, right?
Yeah, identify
Uh,
with it.
yeah, because it's not organic anymore, right? Like that connection with your
Yes,
land and the things.
yes.
And just when I was thinking that, just in my head, I saw a young lady on a flyover, like the pedestrian flyovers that we have, returning from a shopping round to Lal Bazaar. And she just looked at the mountain, she kept her bags down and she folded her hands and she was praying. And I said, okay, so that has to be a sign. That has to be a sign that even if the stories are not all known, uh, it continues to mean things to the people. So, yeah, so that just happened a week back, I think.
Wow.
So
And
that was that.
you have written about this aspect of the lepchas and how Kanchendzonga means to lepchas and how they are trying to revive the connection in the current the new generations, and there are still
Yes,
people there in Zongu who know all these stories, like Mr.
yes,
Namgyal Lepcha, whom I met there.
yes, yeah,
He knows these stories,
yes,
and they are trying to instill the same in the younger generation.
yes, yes. I've met um, some young people. I mean, I've even met some young people who, not young people, kids named Kongchan, right? So even
Ah,
are being named that. So that's nice to
wonderful.
see.
So, on that optimistic note, thank you so much, Pema, for this elaborate two sessions on your book and talking so candidly about everything about Sikkim and its past and everything related to it.
No, man, thank you for your interest and and this platform and this conversation. It was great fun. Yeah, it was great fun.
I hope we are able to reach more people and more people hear these and get interested in
Yeah,
such stories, especially
yeah,
about Sikkim.
yeah, and put pressure on us to have a reprint out soon.
Yes,
Yeah,
and also to widen its ambit. Maybe there's so many
yes,
more stories waiting to be told.
crazily. Yes, yes, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
Thanks for this, man. This was fun.
yeah. Most welcome. Yeah. Thank you,
Right?
and bye bye. Keep in
Yep,
touch, and I'll
sure.
look out for your new book.
Yes, of course.
Yes, and also
Right.
wait for the reprint.
Yeah, that too. That too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.